Gina?
I had a question about the hammerhead turn, or hammerhead turnaround, whatever you called it.
That's
I
going
need
to be on B.
On B, so I should wait?
Oh, yeah, because we're going to talk about that
Okay.
next. We're going to deal
I
with
can
A
wait.
first.
Okay.
Anybody want to kick a motion out on this, on the 4 conditions?
Sure, I would move that we accept the lot division, including the 4 conditions listed on the screen.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jim and a second by Catherine to approve the lot division with these 4 requirements and conditions.
Can we ask a question about?
You
the
sure can,
condition?
if you got a question.
So in that condition, you know, number 4, where it says, or the developer enters into a development agreement, we do that often?
It's a very typical form
Yeah.
of making.
Sure.
There are 2 options. Sometimes the sequencing of a development doesn't make sense to complete the public improvements before certain phases of construction of the buildings. So that is always an option that they could present, that they would like to be able to obtain a building permit before completing all those public improvements. And if they chose to do that, we would bring a development agreement before the council. It would identify the public improvements they're required to complete, a value for that, and a security amount, and they would have to provide that security, and that would allow for the building permits to be issued. It also give them a specified time frame to complete those public improvements. Typically, it's 9 to 12 months that they must be completed within.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Randy.
At the Public Works meeting, I remember a woman in the Hershey development asking if that pedestrian easement was going to connect to the end of the existing sidewalk there, and I believe, Les, you said that would be a connection, is that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that easement ties into the existing sidewalk. They're located to the north. I guess on this diagram, that sidewalk ends right here. So this is the existing 20-foot pedestrian and utility easement that heads north. So that sidewalk terminates right here, and so it would pick up, turn around, and come down.
Okay, we all good? We have a motion and a second. Everybody understand what we're doing here? I'll start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
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 Okay, we got A done. Let's move on to B with the street standards allow the hammerhead turnaround. Is Les presenting that one? Or are you doing that, Bill?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Les.
Hello again. Yeah, the second item on the list for this particular development, as Bill explained, is the variance to the street standards. As he noted, the cul-de-sac is our typical street standard, and we are referring to the drawings that are within the City Council adopted standard construction drawings. That's what we're referring to, and these are the drawings that specify how things that are going to be public facilities must be constructed. So within that is this particular plan set for cul-de-sac details, and it lays out the requirements for cul-de-sacs, and this is a fairly new standard in respect to what they used to be for many years. We used to allow different sizes of cul-de-sacs. We allowed different configurations of public turnaround on the end of a public street. All that pretty much went away with the standards that we adopted starting back about 2014. And this is what is currently still in place today, which is a cul-de-sac that has a 40-foot radius, an 80-foot diameter within the curb line. Then it's got 5-foot walks all the way around the outside, so it gets you up to 90 feet of diameter. And then there's this paver block strip behind the sidewalk that's really just kind of that overhang for the bumper of the fire truck when it's going around in the circle. Overall, it works out to about 98 feet in diameter, very large, much larger than what was in the original plat for Christopher's Crossing back in 2000. It's certainly a lot bigger than anything they'd be able to build in that location today. So what the standards did when we made the change in 2014 is the hammerhead options went away in terms of permanent public facilities. And the reason for that was we felt that the cul-de-sac was a better option. It provided better access to all the properties, gave better lot frontage on the properties, better for snow removal, those kind of things, general fire turnaround. But there are occasions when the hammerhead does fit the topography and the site configuration better. And this is probably a good example of that. And so the request that's being made is to allow a permanent public turnaround that is consistent essentially with our temporary turnarounds that are in our current standards, and that's what these three represent. The temporary turnarounds are typically placed at the end of a paved roadway, so the kind of the darker gray here, where, say, you're at the end of a subdivision, and we anticipate that road will be extended in the future, and so for the meantime, it may be a year, that may be 10 years, you end up with some kind of a temporary turnaround for the public, the fire trucks, the garbage truck, everybody else, to be able to make the U-turn and head back the way they came on the public street. Otherwise, you just end up with this little stubby dead end, kind of like we have at the end of Lande right now, and there's nowhere to turn around except in somebody's driveway. And so the temporary turnarounds are still in the standards with all these different configurations for that reason. The one that essentially we're trying to meet here, the applicant is trying to meet, is this one shown here on the right. And just zooming in a bit, you can see it has a 20-foot wide lane width. It's a 70-foot deep T, if you will, and 60 foot each way as a minimum to allow a fire truck to make that motion and make the turnaround. Fire truck, bus, garbage truck, whatever it may be. And so the proposal that is before you in the lot division incorporates this style of turnaround. They're actually proposing, instead of 20 feet wide, that it be, I think it's 28 feet, which is the minimum allowed public street width on a dead-end street under the current city standards. That's the only place we allow the 28-foot anymore, is where there's really no opportunity for that street to be extended in the future, and that is the case in this particular situation. So they are proposing, instead of 20, they use the 28, so it meets our minimum street requirement for width, but then also using the hammerhead in lieu of the standard cul-de-sac. So the variance that is before you is a variance from the adopted standard details and construction drawings that require a cul-de-sac, and in lieu of that, allow the use of the hammerhead style turnaround.
You had a question, Gina, on hammerheads.
I think Les answered it.
Okay.
Right on.
Other questions for Les? Pretty straightforward. Brandy?
I think, in Public Works, there was discussion too, asking how the fire department feels about this, and if you would like to just respond to that.
And certainly, the standards as they exist today were all vetted through the fire department when they were adopted back in 2014. So the temporary turnarounds, the cul-de-sacs, the hammerheads, as we're discussing here, all of those went through the fire department at that time, and they were comfortable with those standards. In fact, some of them got bigger, such as the cul-de-sac, as part of that review process by the fire department. So these have met with their concurrence at the time that they were adopted.
Okay, I move to approve the variance request to build a permanent type 3 turnaround per standard construction, drawing number 5. But is it temporary standard construction? Because that's what it said on the side.
Permanent turnaround meeting the minimum standard for a temporary turnaround, sizing-wise.
Okay, so that's okay in there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, for, drawing 5, yeah.
Okay, Catherine made a motion.
I'll second.
Brandy, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, give it to Brent. Ladies first.
Okay, Catherine made a motion, Brandy seconded that motion to approve the variance request to build a permanent type 3 turnaround per standard construction, drawing 5. I'll start the roll with Brandy.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
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 Okay, now, we will go on to number C, which will be a public hearing.